each one of us have to be ready. The readiness issue is really what matters more than anything.
Right.
I would want you to overcome the fear of that, but I am now more aware of what it took for me to get here.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Mom, thanks for being here. So let's start off with a fun question. What do you think happens when we die?
The very big answer is that I do not know because I haven't died yet.
Right.
At least not completely. But I have experienced several kinds of deaths throughout my life. And I think we all can relate to those deaths because that's the new beginning always, actually. When we die to, let's say, to a story that we have been telling all our life. And then we just say, I'm not going to tell that story anymore. I'm just dropping it. And then we have to forge a new story and start a new life practically. Or it can happen with a friendship. It can happen with a taste that we have been hooked to. And now we are ready to move on to better things.
So these are more metaphorical
deaths.
Yes. So you haven't had like a near-death experience or anything like that?
Well, I did have what I thought, maybe I'm dying now.
Oh, really?
And I had a sweet memory of that because I didn't die.
Right.
But yes, those experiences were absolutely life-changing and for the good.
So are you talking about a near-death experience when you said it was life-changing?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that? What happened?
Yes. It was during a very big health challenge. And I felt that my body was going through some very unusual symptoms. And as I was laying there completely weak and not being able to literally move, and I looked around and I said, maybe this is it,
So there was no fear?
No, there was no fear. There was a sweet, like, how could I tell everybody how much I loved them, how much I appreciated them, how awesome this was. And I looked over to this person sleeping next to me, right, my husband, and I said, maybe I won't see you, but I love you. And then I fell asleep. And thankfully, I woke up next morning. So,
right.
And then that was a life-changing experience because my body somehow was rejuvenated. And from then on, I was getting better and better and better, and every day, and then stronger, and literally felt like I am a new person, and kept that memory as a marker, as a refer back to that, and understand how the body is so resilient and so amazing and takes somehow strength from another place. Yeah.
So that was an experience of you thinking and contemplating like this could be
it, right.
Right. So what do you think actually does happen when it is it for you?
I have another story about that. I would love to just get this across to as many people, as many of my friends, as many of my counselors that I have been talking with about this issue, because I think we all agree that is a human
predicament.
A human predicament, yes, where we struggle with this question, what happens when we die? What happens after we die? What do the sacred scriptures say? What do people say? What do near-death experiencing people say? What do the philosophers say? What do the scientists say? What did grandmothers say, And from all those particles of information, we then form something that is our private belief.
Right.
And whether we know it or not, everything depends on that.
Right.
Everything depends on what we ultimately put together.
Right.
And so what I put together will probably not resonate with everybody who's hearing this.
Right.
But it's very true for me.
Okay.
So what I think happens after is what I observed in this one experience. A friend of mine called up and said, my beloved aunt, who actually raised her, very dear, beautiful lady who was an absolute staunch atheist that absolutely don't talk to me about God. No, none of that. It's not true. And she lived her life like that. Obviously, she was a very good person, raising this child lovingly. And then she was at the hospital on her last days, or the last chapter of her life. And so this friend of mine asked, would you come with me? Because she seems to be suffering so badly. And I tried to talk with her about God and so on. And nothing is getting through. And I said, well, what am I going to say? But all the way there, I was just like, what can I do? What can I say? I don't know anything about that. Well, who am I to say anything? I know what sacred writings are saying. But will that really help? Will that really make a difference? So as I was contemplating, urgently trying to get some clue of what to do, we arrive at intensive care, and there is this older lady who is suffering incredibly. And it was hard to see it, hard to observe it. Her face was contracting in agony, and she was just horrified at something. And as we were trying to talk to her, she wouldn't hear it. And we were trying to pray, and as I was listening, like, what can I do? What can I do? Rita, literally, suddenly, I just turned toward her, walked over real close to her head, and started to hum a song, just humming a beautiful song that just came there. And I'm not a singer, so I have no knowledge of any of that, except that something in me gave me that answer at this moment, is to sing to her. And I was listening to it myself, just listening to this beautiful message of comfort and relax and let it go, and whatever that is. This song was communicating much more than words could. Mm-hmm. And I think she was kind of turning away from words at that point. She didn't want to hear anything. But this song was going higher and higher, and it was ascending. And as the song was ascending, it became to me even almost angelic. And it sounded gorgeous. Everybody stopped. And as the song was going on, she suddenly started turning, and her face relaxed. And you could have seen that whatever was holding her, now she dropped it. She turned away from it. She chose to listen to this other message. And as she was listening to this other message, her pain was gone. Her torment was gone. Her torture ring, whatever that was melting away. And so here she was, and she was, suddenly she started beaming. Just beaming, and I'm looking at it. My eyeballs are sweaty, and everybody's eyeballs are sweaty, and we are just
interesting way to say crying.
yeah. And then the chaplain of the hospital walked in, and she said, "Whoa, I haven't seen her like that." And we were just like, yeah. So then at that point, the nurses came, doctor. We don't even know how it happened, but she was wheeled away, And we sat outside, and the two of us, we just looked at each other like, did you see that? Was that amazing? And I was myself like, amazing. So later we heard that she passed, and the chaplain said that she passed in peace. And that is a story I refer to a lot when I think about what happens at death. What happens at death, in my opinion, is that we turn based on those last moments where all is possible, where it's possible to turn away from a lifetime of denial. And you know what we found out since then is that as a child, she was scared out of her mind about the message of God, who supposedly is going to send somebody to hell who is not doing the right thing, who is not, jumping through the hoop of the church. And she, as a young person, decided that she doesn't want to have anything to do with that. So her whole life, this fear of death was covered over with this, I do not believe in God or anything about God. And for her whole life, she lived in this covered over torment, which at the end of the life came up anyway. It had to be dealt with. And by this goodness, whatever we call it, this incredible goodness, there was this chance for her to actually turn this whole thing away and deal with it in a very interesting, unusual, unexpected way. Now, will religious people agree with me that that was it? I don't care. I just really don't care. I remember the glory of it, the amazing experience of it, and we believe what we want to believe of that is that God is that good. Right.
So, so you're, if you were to describe then what you think happened, so people are basically faced with this chance to say, what do I really think is going to happen, or the fears or whatever. And I've heard people talk about this before who have an illness and they're basically preparing for death.
Yeah.
That there was one girl in particular who she had a near-death experience after she had thought she was prepared for death. And then when she came back, she realized I was not prepared because something almost a survival instinct came in, and all of her preparation to remain calm and this, it was this instant, I need to survive. And she started to kind of panic, and she was like, I'm going to die in an elevator. Like, what? And so and she realized in herself, I wasn't as prepared as I thought I was. And she was like, I don't think we can prepare for it.
Yes.
Because you have no idea what the actual preparation, what you're supposed to be preparing for.
Yes.
So what you are saying is, that's kind of the final challenge, is for people to face what they actually believe and think, because if you're aware when it's happening, then you're aware that you're about to die. So those final moments, do you feel like there's a different death experience for somebody who is at peace versus somebody who's screaming and saying, no, I don't want to die? Do you feel like that's different, or do you feel like all death experiences are the same?
Well, I don't think that there is such thing in this whole creation or universe or whatever, anything that we know as the same. There's no, that idea is a faulty premise. So there is no such thing, because I am not going to be the same person tonight as I am right now.
So the way that you view life is, when you wake up in the morning to when you go to sleep is almost like a lifetime.
It's a lifetime.
And that you're changing throughout that.
It's an opportunity upon opportunity. As you breathe in and breathe out, you have newer options based on where you're coming from. So at every moment, there's a chance to upgrade what our experience is. But I have to preface that with, you have to be awake for that. You cannot operate in the system of the programming, because if we are operating in the programmed persona that we have become through the programming, then we are really sleepwalking. That's not really the life that we came here to live.
Right.
And the whole point of life is to wake up from that.
Right. I think.
And start living.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of people will definitely understand what you mean when you say the kind of the persona that's built and awakening from that.
Yes.
So when you talk about programming, I like to imagine that it's almost when you're not in control of the choices that you're making.
Right. It's
the
default.
Choice will be exactly.
Yes.
There will be a default choice.
Yes.
And so do you think that most people are living in that default programmed state to where they're just floating through life and they think whatever comes their way is whatever's going to come their way?
I don't think they even think that. And I'm not saying that most people, because in my experience, the world is going through an incredible change, an incredible upgrade that really is forcing us to, in a good way, forcing us to check reality continually. Like, is this really what I want to live? You know, is this really who I am? Is this really what I choose? Or is this thing that I was told I am and I was made to do as my occupation or whatever, is this really who I am? And when we ask those questions and ask it many times and over until we come to this, that's who I am. And it's good that I am that. And I'm just going to stay that way. I like this. This is home. This is okay. Oh, you may not like it. Well, too bad.
So finding that within yourself,
you find it within yourself. You cannot find it in somebody telling it to you.
Right.
That's why I refuse to tell anybody who they are. Right. You know, when they say, "Who am I? What am I?" Let's find out.
Right.
But you will find out. Yeah.
So an interesting way to get to know somebody and the more personal side of who they are, I think, comes in the answer of what you think happens after this lifetime. So we've kind of talked about how it's important in this life to be aware, be awake, be present, and try to, in your words, upgrade yourself. So try to be better every day. And in pursuit of that goal, there is going to eventually come the time where you have to think of death and interpret whatever it means for you. So what has been your journey with the inevitable? Right now, it is inevitable that everyone will die. We don't have the technology yet to prolong life. I'm not sure.
They're working at it.
They are working at it, but I'm not exactly sure if people are necessarily going to want it.
Yeah.
And this kind of comes from the movie In Time with Justin Timberlake. It's a great movie. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
Oh, you would probably love it. Okay. So in the movie, there is, I want to say that it was from this movie. Maybe it was somebody I talked to about it, but they basically said that, you can live forever. Your body maybe could live forever if you were genetically engineered, but your mind has a time limit, that your mind won't want to be here longer than necessary. So that's my personal opinion. I'm not sure if people are necessarily going to want to live longer than the lifespan right now, but right now we know that we most likely are going to face some sort of face some sort of death. So I think the way that people view what death is can kind of translate to how they deal with the day-to-day. So when you lose someone,
very good point.
So
excellent.
I want your take on that. What is your...
Very, very good point. I love it because it truly is a day-by-day discovery. And the sacred writings say in one part where it says that the fear of death is something that all humanity is tormented by.
Right.
And the fear is actually a kind of slavery. So somebody who is fearing death is not able to live freely. And what are we here for? It's for freedom, right? We are freedom-seeking beings. We want to be free. We want to be loved. We want to love. We want to enjoy our life. We are joy seekers. That's really somehow in our DNA, physical, mental, wanting to be free, wanting to be at peace, and so on. So that is what we are not able to live if we are in the slavery and fearing the death which is going to come over there. Not now.
Right.
Not now. So if I fear death now, then what am I living is an illusion and a make-believe based on the past that somebody said about death. Because as a child, no child is thinking about death.
Right.
That's for sure. I have watched all of you.
Yeah.
None of you were ever fretting or obsessing over death. It was just like life, love, fun. That's what is natural. And also the sacred writings say, unless you become like that child, you cannot see the good life. You cannot live that abundant good life. So then what is really the problem if I fear death now? Then my now is actually a figment of the past and the future. So the now is actually swallowed up by this illusion, because it's not, like I said in the beginning, I haven't died yet.
Right.
So how can I know that?
Right.
I can listen to all these other things, information and all that, and it might be very interesting to talk about it. But for a fact, we do not know until we get there.
Right.
And then the sacred writings say too, when we get there on that last day is when we deal with it. That is when the promise is that there will be a victory, that it will be, oh my goodness, I was fearing it all my life, and here we go. This is the most, wow, you know?
So you are looking forward to the wow experience, not looking forward to in the way that says, let me get there quicker, obviously.
Yeah.
But saying you have come to the conclusion that it is not worth almost wasting time or wasting life,
wasting energy
about it.
Yes.
But do you still view it as something that is 100% in your mind going to be a good experience?
Well, again, what can we do except take clues, right? So my life gives me a clue, for instance, where, let's say, I had a storyline about myself. And this storyline just turns out to be, it's not working anymore. You know, this thing about me being a certain way, this egoic storyline about who I am, is just not working. And as I meditate and I work with it and I face it and I examine it and I take it apart and look at it, I discover that this is not serving me anymore. I'm willing to die to it. Yeah? The question will be, well, will I be recognized then? You know, if I'm not that anymore, and I go ahead and rewrite my persona in the world, then will people believe me? Will they think that I'm faking it? What will they think, right? And then, if we dare to actually die to that old behavioral pattern and thinking pattern and let it drop and then try it out little by little to be this upgraded version of myself, you know, like our beloved Larry is saying it, like, be your best version self. And how does that happen? Is by forging it ahead, you know, and you send it ahead every day as you meditate and say, okay, today I will be much kinder because I want to be. Because that's my choice. I want to be this and this and this, and you fill in the blank. Then is where you discover that dying to that was the most wonderful release. And what I am now able to do is live this newness of life. It's new. I am new. I feel wonderful being kinder. I feel more and more actually real. I'm becoming more and more real. Mm-hmm. So that's my clue of what that might be.
The real death.
The real death is that what we are letting go of is really the things that are okay to let drop. Because it's not really the essence of who I am. Because the essence of who I am is the one who stays and makes the decision to keep going.
So what would you say about people who are afraid of maybe losing memories or not being aware anymore, or when the real death happens that you will have no sense of who you are and where you came from and all of that? I think that's probably the root of what a lot of people are afraid of, is that they won't be them when they die, that there will be either nothing or they will just be this thing that's floating, that they, like there's a lot of interpretations of what people are afraid of as far as that goes. So what you've done in your life, I'll just kind of correct me if I'm wrong. So with it's almost like you do the micro correction with the day to day.
Yeah.
You view that as a new chance at a new life, and you take that there's heavy importance placed on life.
Yes.
And in doing that, you then view the final death, which is heading down the road. So you don't deal with it necessarily now. You view it as something that will come. And when it does come, you see it as another chance at an upgrade of some sort. So it will be this better thing that you kind of enter into. Is that kind of how you see it?
Well, what came to mind right now is, I think it was, who said that? I will think of it in a second. He said something to the effect that the fear of death is really coming from the fear of life. And a person who is fully alive, fully awake, fully there, here, right now, living this life without the interference of the past or without the fear of the future, that person is so present, is so full of life that she doesn't have the space or the time to waste on those two aspects of our mind. Because ultimately, just think of it. Where does that exist, past and future? Where does it exist?
In our mind.
Only in our mind. In reality, it doesn't. This is real, right? I don't think that we should be that high-minded that we say, no, there is like, what we know right now, this table here is real, and this microphone, and you.
From what we know as of yet, but until we find out we're in a simulation.
Yes, this is all just and Ryan, you over there.
Right, so.
He's the master.
So
behind the scene.
I hope not. I hope for everyone's sake that is not true.
So for the people watching this, what would you say the best tip? So when I asked Brett this, his answer was think of death, contemplate it, and even if it's terrifying, because eventually you'll realize it's not necessarily worth being afraid of, because it's not going to be this either this new thing that comes to you that you shove down, that comes to you when you don't want it. If you truly face it, which he kind of attributes that to other areas in life, other difficult things. If you look at it and you face it, even if you don't, even if you're terrified, the willingness to face it and look at it and say, all right, let's deal with it. Let's just do this now. It's kind of like the big moment with the hero when he faces the dragon and he says, I'm not going to run away because I need to get past you. I need to see what you're protecting. It's the gold. And this is kind of a Jordan Peterson principle as well, which is why I think a lot of people he's very controversial, because the people who understand that message get it, and the people who don't I don't think they've heard his message. So it's interesting. But that's what I've gained from listening to a lot of his lectures.
Yeah.
But the idea of looking at it and facing it and conquering that, in a sense, is one way to deal with that. So what would you say your advice to people would be if they said, how do I get over the fear of death? What would you say to them?
I would say that in that case, meditation is the medication.
It even rhymed.
Yeah. Because first of all, the good part is that it's free.
Yeah.
It doesn't have side effects, except that you get much, much better at who you are. And most of all, because in meditation, you have the prerequisite and the potential, your intention is so set that you created for yourself this space and time, the stillness, and the goal is to face something and to deal with it, right? So it's not going to be a haphazard, like, okay, now between now and the red light change green, I'm going to deal with it.
Right.
It's more like, I'm ready to deal with this. This is now coming to a head, and I am going to do it. And so in the posture of meditation, and I'm not talking about cross legs and om thing on the mountaintop.
Or the mental posture.
It's a mental positioning, and it is, listen to this, the word purpose is actually pure position. It's being in a pure position, pure intention position. So if I want to fulfill the purpose of overcoming death, fear, then I am purposing to be in that space where the highest probability is that I will have a chance to succeed, to face this thing and see what happens. Because I don't even want to say, oh, overcome it.
Right.
Because you might not at this first session. But at least you have given yourself a chance. So I would say, go to your cave. Mine is in the bathroom. Yeah. Or sometimes it's in the closet. Or sometimes it's in my car. Rolled up windows and somewhere else, somewhere where nobody can see me. When I have to deal with something of some great deep importance, I know that I'm fooling myself if I think that this is just going to be a flippant little, now 5 minutes, okay. Right? No, it's a purpose, it's an intention, it's setting it up, it's a very wholeness, bringing my wholeness to it. No withholding, no covering up, no, I don't know if I dare to go there. Now, if you would happen to be in the beginning of this meditation experience, and if you are fearful of even meditating, then have a trusted friend there with you meditating, because that is very, very helpful. But let's say you are moving on from that experience, from that initial first experience with meditation, and you have trusted that this is safe, that this is good, this actually is upgrading me, this is giving me more energy, this is giving me more awareness, this is giving me more life, because I'm not obsessing over certain things, because I understand more of who I am, how things are happening, how things are being taken care of through my alignment with this now moment. So when we do that and we say, now I'm ready for this big one, because let's face it, the big one is the fear of death, in this case. Even the sacred writings say that's the last enemy. You know, that's the thing that nobody want to deal with.
Right.
And when you invited me to speak about this, I said, what? That's exactly the last thing on my list that I would ever want to talk about.
Yeah.
But I'm ready for the challenge, you know.
Right.
So I thought about it, and I thought about how helpful it was for me to be invited to think about it before I came here. That alone, Rita, was life-changing. So I thank you. Big time, big time. If a person is watching these kinds of podcasts and they can go past the title and they say, oh, there's death in the title. No, not watching. Well, that person is still really not ready. So we will not judge that person saying, well, you know,
Right.
we are just, you know. It's more like, okay, did you see that? Did you see how much you are avoiding it? Do you know that this is where the direction is for more life for you? To overcome that, to be free from that? Can you imagine a life where you will not be like that? Where you don't have that knee-jerk reaction to the word death? Where you will look at it because you have dealt with it.
Right.
So how is that happening in meditation? Is that you have dealt with so many other things already that now you're ready for the big one. And I would say that the only way we can know that is that it actually comes up. We are not forcing it. We could never say, Mrs. So-and-so, come over here. I want you to overcome the fear of that. And she says, get out of my life, right? Because each one of us have to be ready. The readiness issue is really what matters. More than anything.
Right.
I would want you to overcome the fear of that, but I am now more aware of what it took for me to get here.
Right.
So I'm not going to think that my goodwill is appropriate.
Right.
You will know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very important, is for people to kind of take that personal inventory to see, where am I actually on
check.
this? Right.
Absolutely.
So I have a fun question for you.
Yes.
You were talking about how meditation can kind of be that tool that doesn't cost anything. You know, you just have to find a good place and get your mind in the right place to do it. So, and that's, I think, another reason why it became very popular. Because people realized, oh, this is helping me, you know, if you go into it with that mindset.
Yes.
So here's my interesting question for you. And you sat in on the conversation with Brett, so you know a little bit. But what do you think about the difference between meditation and something like psychedelics, which they have said that psychedelics are kind of, if you imagine what happens in meditation over the course of many, many sessions happens over the course of a few hours with something like a psychedelic, and that you can't choose. You can't say, I have this substance here and I'm going to deal with death. Take it, and then you deal with death. You may not. Whatever you deal with is whatever you must deal with.
You were ready for. Isn't it?
That's what's interesting, is some people say they needed to get over X, Y, Z, and they weren't. It almost surprised them that was the thing they had to deal with. So I've read a lot of this, that the stories of people saying, I really wanted to get over this thing, and then this thing that I thought I was over came up, and I realized I wasn't over it.
Yes.
So there is this interesting kind of therapeutic effect that people deal with things that they don't necessarily prepare for. Sometimes it does happen, and sometimes it sneaks up on you. So what would you say?
You know why that is? Because the subconscious is a different part of us, which is obviously, as it says, subconscious, so it's not conscious. And the mind is another thing. So the mind can say, you know what, I overcame that already. I dealt with it. And the subconscious says, no, there's still some garbage here. And if you want to be free, this has to be, and then the subconscious starts to push it up, and the mind says, no, I have dealt with it already. No. And then a psychedelic, for instance, takes down that whatever that is, which can suppress it, and these things are able to rise. So what I would say is that if it's done in the right way, for the right reasons and so on, then of course it will be a very beneficial facilitation. It facilitates that which is there already,
right,
and that has to be dealt with already. And I have heard many, many stories, even though my upbringing and my past is like, oh no, you don't need that,
right,
don't go there. But then I hear stories where people overcame some tremendous things that no counseling for decades could touch,
right,
because that was in the conscious state of the mind, and they were able to block it.
Right.
So into that realm of speaking, this subconscious thing could not enter,
right,
because they were blocking it off. So there had to be something. And sometimes it's a very harrowing experience, or a near-death experience, many times, right? And what I think interesting is that the narcotic, some sort of substance that helps a person to let go of that blockage, that many times they produce that effect, very, very similar effect to a near-death experience, or a shock, just like, whoa, I didn't think that. And then it will have this incredibly beneficial effect of being able to overcome that hidden issue, right? If we could do it all in the mind,
right,
that would be wonderful, I think.
Would you say that meditation is a path? If some people are like, I will never take the psychedelic. Russell Brand is somebody who says that he essentially can get to the place that a psychedelic brings you with just meditation.
Yes.
Would you say?
I say that too.
Yeah. Okay.
I most certainly say that, because I have spoken with many who do psychedelics, and I'm like, I know that place. I know exactly. I know how to get there. I have now, and I'm not saying it as if I'm different from anybody else. I'm just saying that I took enough time, or maybe interest, or maybe a desire to continue on that path, because it was so pleasurable, so enjoyable to be freer and freer and freer. And if we take the prescription that our beloved pastor is talking about, to say to yourself, start with this, to say to yourself, I am loved, I am free, I am accepted, but how do I get there to experience it? How do I get there? My answer is through meditation, because I have to take that one word and contemplate on it. Like, how can I be free? In my meditation, in the classes that I facilitate, we remind ourselves that, look, just like life starts with what?
Birth?
Breath in, right?
Oh.
Right? That's how all of you, I watched it.
It's all 6 of us.
That's the beginning of life, is the in-breath. Right? And what is the end of life?
The out. So it's one big breath. That's what life is.
That's a big, glorious breath. And the sacred writing says, who breathed into us the breath of life? Who was that?
I don't know.
It says God.
Right.
God took the man, the mankind, and breathes today into that baby the breath of life. And then that little meat becomes a living soul. And at the end of life, you see what the dread many people expressed to me was that they looked at this corpse in the casket, and they would look at it, and the most horrifying idea was, this one person said that they're in there. They're in there and they're dead. And when we talked about this breath issue, and I said, okay, but they exhaled. Do you remember that? Were you there, or can you see that at the end they are not holding their breath? There's nobody in there. Nobody, the essence of who you knew, who you loved, is not in there. Just like that blouse, if it lays here on this table, I will not look for you in it, right? I will know that, yeah, she wore that thing. I know for sure she wore that thing, but she's not in there. I know for a fact.
Right.
Right?
So to end off this podcast, I feel like you've talked a lot about the practical advice and kind of how you cope with and deal with this issue, which is very, very interesting. And I feel like the understanding, kind of the background understanding is through your life, you've definitely had your share of highs and lows. And through we'll keep this part kind of as brief as possible because I'm still looking for the answer that I think you can give. So your pursuit of truth in what life is, what we are doing here, what the purpose is, what is real, you had to kind of filter through a lot of religious stuff that you when you were brought up originally, there was no religion.
Right. Atheism reigned.
Right. And you saying that didn't really quite feel right for me. It didn't resonate well. And through a lot of influences in your life from loving people who had some sort of a faith, some sort of religious tie, you sifted through, and I've seen you through your life, sifting through and going from this version to this version of these different beliefs and studying Hebrew and Greek and trying to figure out what is all of this, why do we have this, and why is it that some people have a lot of hatred and a lot of very closed-minded views, but then there's some people who are open, like there's a collection of people that have these different beliefs. And what you've done is you've almost adopted a personal version of, we can call it the Christian faith. But when you say God, what's interesting is I know you don't mean the typical definition for that. And when you talk about the Bible, I know that you don't read it just for the words that it's saying. You really try to see why has this withstood time.
Yeah.
So the religious aspect, would you say that has given you, that has been the best avenue to try to express with words, just because there are stories that kind of describe the human predicament in there. And so you've identified yourself in a lot of these stories and said, yeah, that seems right, or that seems like the way that I'm traveling on this road to not be afraid of death. So what I'm interested to know is, after you've kind of unpacked a lot of the traditional religious stuff that most people may know and probably steer away from, you've let a lot of that go. You have your own thing that works. So what happens when we die?
I think that what happens when I die is where I am at that moment, ready to enter into that which I have become.
What does that mean?
Which to tell you, the upgrade upon upgrade, which means we are going from strength to strength to strength toward that perfect day. So when that perfect day is, then we enter, or I enter, that perfection that I have came to realize. And that is why I say that no two deaths are the same, because we all go from our strength to strength to strength, or from our confusion to more clarity and more clarity, or from our pain and sorrow to more and more peace or forgiveness, or all those things that make a new day worth living in. Therefore, no two deaths can be the same. I cannot say, look, I am going to experience this. And because I believe that, I want you to believe that. That would be, again, making or trying to make cookie cutters with the best intention. You know, the best intention is of a mother. Like I'm raising 6 children. So what's the easiest way to do this? Well, I'm just going to tell them all what to believe. I'm telling them what to say, what not to say. And then they all going to believe something safe, and they will be safe. They will succeed in the right way. And, you know, all that is mothering. That's the fear of a mother that she has to overcome in order to let her children be free to discover their way. And to tell you how that happened was when I was pregnant with the first child. And I remember my husband leaving the house, and hormones are already, you know, moving. And by the way, we all know what happens. We all who were pregnant, we know what happens when the hormones start circulating. That fear of my husband leaving my vicinity rose up and gripped me. And I could not deal with the fear of losing him. And I thought that was love. But it's really not that. It's more like that survival instinctive wanting to have the security. I'm here with this child, and I need support, I need help, and all those aspects. So then I become somebody else based on the situation I'm carrying. Therefore, I'm saying that somebody could be listening to this who is going through something that they cannot relate to what I'm talking about right now. But let me assure you, the one who may be going through something else, that what you are going through is the essential part of you becoming better and better version of who you are.
So the struggle is something that's vital to growing. Vital.
And we could change in this one thing, is to embrace it rather than think that that's some injustice, that we didn't deserve this. You know, somebody's punishing me. Why am I going through this? When there is that swift change in us, the possibility of looking at it in a different way, then this will become my benefit. And yes, you will still feel the strength of that feeling, but it will not be taking you down or backwards. So my best advice to you is, when you, for instance, because I mentioned this, when you see your husband leaving or your friend or your whatever, don't take it as some sort of emergency, horrific feeling in the gut. Be with your gut at that point, and close your eyes and breathe into that and listen, and discover, what is this all about? And then you discover that who you really are, who's observing this tremendously strong feeling in the body, the observer of this is really not worried. That's not the pregnant mother. That observer is what, again, sacred writing is talking about, is that spirit or that center of us, that truth that can never be touched or destroyed. It will never end, it never dies.
Would you call that the soul?
The soul, that eternal beingness. So that's my best advice, to look at it that way. Embrace it. Learn to learn from it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think on another topic for a future podcast, I think talking about how science hasn't quite found a reason or a explanation for a soul or the existence of who you are inside, who you feel you are inside. And I feel like today, with a lot of the kind of political talk that's going on, I think that conversation's very, very interesting to say, okay, then what is actually inside? Who is you? You know?
Right.
I think that's really interesting. So, all right. I think we're good.
Oh, we are so good. I just thank you with all my heart for challenging me.
Absolutely.
And I believe that your work is a great benefit to anybody who listens, because your questions are leading into the places that people not necessarily want to go to, but if they dare, then they will look back at you and say, you know what, she challenged me to change my life. She doesn't even know me. But because I listened to her questions and I allowed myself to ask the same questions, that here I am and I'm Fourier. And so, thank you for this. What? Rita Bauckham. Okay, yeah, that's her name.
Yeah. Or on YouTube, Rita Michelle.
or yeah, there she goes. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Mom.
You're welcome.
That was great. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.